From earliest childhood, darkness had fascinated me, drawn me in, held me with the thrill of the unknown, even as it frightened me. But that fear was something different then. For nearly 3 months now, I've been afraid of it in a way I never was before. Though afraid isn't quite right either. I don't avoid the dark. If anything, I keep the lights off as much as I can, even on the blackest nights. And I keep the windows shut as tight as possible. My fear is irrational, I know that, even accounting for everything I've discovered. And yet, I can't seem to will it away. The circumstances behind that fear arrived the way great discoveries so often do, if I may be forgiven the grandiosity, by pure accident. It probably started in 1982 or 1983, when I was in 5th grade and stumbled across a science journal with an article about unusual optical phenomena. What caught my attention most was a simple but striking experiment. A flashlight aimed into a concave mirror, which focused the beam onto a razor blade. With that crude setup, you could make visible the faintest distortions in air refraction. The shadow of heated gas rising from a candle flame, normally invisible to the naked eye. I spent a great deal of time experimenting with different light sources, lenses, cardboard cutouts with slits, and whatever other simple equipment I could scrounge together or build myself. I went further than that, actually. As soon as I had the chance, I commandeered an entire room for the hobby. The interest never left me, even now. The turning point came on a Monday evening in November 2007. I was assembling another contraption, something along the lines of a microscope, and I made an error somewhere. The wrong angle between a diverging lens and one of the mirrors, as I later figured out. Instead of a magnified image of microorganisms on the tip of a needle, what appeared on my white paper screen was something else entirely. What I saw resembled a hazy tangle of threads and knots, with tiny rings drifting between them, surrounded by halos that were startlingly bright and nearly red, despite the flashlight beam being blue. The image was blurry, and I was afraid to touch anything before I documented the setup carefully. A basic precaution. You know how in Bulgakov's The Fatal Eggs, only Professor Persikov could find the ray of life again once he'd lost it? That was exactly what came to mind. I felt certain I'd stumbled onto something similar. While I was squinting, trying to make out the details and shield my eyes from the glare, the tangle of threads began to drift apart, slowly, steadily, like smoke in a breeze. I watched for about a minute until the strange shapes dissolved into nothing but a faint circle on the paper. After waiting a little longer, I turned on the room light, carefully redrew the whole apparatus, photographed it for good measure, and then ran the experiment again without changing a thing. The moment the ceiling light went off and the flashlight came on, the same image returned. Different arrangement, but the same phenomenon, and noticeably sharper this time. The threads and rings faded to nothing in roughly 3.5 minutes. Acting on instinct, I ran the experiment several more times, switching the device on at different intervals after turning off the light, and also with the room fully lit. New patterns formed immediately in complete darkness, then vanished without a trace after 3 to 4 minutes. That night, I decided not to let myself go down the rabbit hole. I could already see myself sitting there until dawn and missing every obligation I had the next day. But the following evening, I picked up where I'd left off. I also wanted to understand what was actually producing the effect, and in time, I worked it out. I can't explain it here for reasons I'll mention below. 4 days in, I finally let myself start adjusting individual components. By the end of that week, I'd found the best configuration, and a couple of months later, I'd built a more compact device, roughly the size of an early 19th century camera. Its description, diagrams, and what is probably an embarrassingly pompous name are all recorded in my blue notebook number 2. My technical background probably delayed my understanding of what I was actually looking at. It took a full year before it clicked. The patterns looked remarkably like fungal mycelium, or more accurately, like lichen with flecks of algae. except for a certain ethereal quality I'm unable to put into words. I tried repeatedly to touch them with a stick, to blow them away, all to no effect. They ignored every physical intervention I could think of. Experiments with flashlights of different colors allowed me to determine their preferences fairly precisely. Red light and probably infrared. Bluer wavelengths accelerated their decay, and lasers passed through the apparatus worked almost exactly as they do in science fiction. They cut and tore the formations apart. Before long, it was clear to me that I was dealing with non-material organisms of a structure utterly beyond my comprehension. Something like structured darkness, or more precisely, like the solidified idea of darkness at the very moment it falls. A semi-abstract concept, loosely connected to the known laws of nature, but surely belonging to physical reality if it can be seen at all. There is a concept called the shadow biosphere, an entire layer of life existing right alongside us, unnoticed simply because it has a completely different, non-protein basis. Usually, people imagine something silicon-based or similar, but what I appeared to have found was something that fit the term far more literally. I'll be honest, I'm not good at building atmosphere, so I'll get to the point. In June 2012, I was able to document more complex organisms. By the very end of 2014, I had made contact with a member of a sentient species among them. The details of how I accomplished this are in notebooks 7 through 52, along with the explanations for why these discoveries didn't become public knowledge at the time. The beings were no less astonished than I was. To them, we are something like radio waves. Almost none of our ordinary actions are available to them, but they are capable of things no human being has ever dreamed of. I suspect that among the shadow ones, there are scientists who have already worked out ways to interact with us more fully, or perhaps already have, judging by certain stories that circulate online. In early summer of this year, 2015, I reached an agreement with them. They make no attempt to harm me or the rest of humanity, and I keep my notebooks hidden. They've been passed to people I trust, who will publish them after my death without reading so much as the labels on the covers until then. I'm completely certain that is sufficient protection. What drives me to avoid creating new darkness to an almost absurd degree is described in notebook number 44 and in several passages from earlier entries that I didn't understand at first. It is an incomprehensibly vast creature that hides from the sun on the night side of our planet. Its nature differs fundamentally even from the shadow dwellers and other organisms like them that I have observed, though it shares much in common with them. Every time evening falls somewhere, or light is blocked out in any other way, a new fragment is added to its monstrous mass. Every day, across half the globe, for billions of years, never diminishing. I understand that no one is going to give up artificial lighting. But bear this in mind. It senses disruptions to the daily cycle, especially when they occur repeatedly over short periods of time. Such a colossal organism almost certainly cannot pinpoint the precise coordinates of a lamp switching off or on, the way we remain oblivious to microbes crawling across our skin. But there is a risk that one day, feeling an especially intense itch from them, it will scratch. Lately, I have started seeing a psychotherapist, and not only to settle my nerves. Hypnotherapy sessions are helping me begin to grasp the finer details of the shadow dwellers' lives and nature. So I hope that in the near future, I will find the strength to continue my experiments. After all, there is something to be proud of in being human.